ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the India Today group, it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to the first State of the State Conclave and Report on Odisha being organized by India Today magazine. I had the privilege of interviewing the Honorable Chief Minister, Mr. Naveen Patnaik, in June, and featuring him on the cover of India Today. I'm sure some of you all may have seen that. And of course, what struck me was the remarkable progress that Odisha has made in recent times. I had visited the state almost 30 years back, and I was telling Ashok, Ashok Dalwai is, I think, also coming in. He's also, I think, from the state. And at that time, this was around 1987, and the state was not even what was called the Bimaru state at one time. You know, the Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh. It was beyond that pale. It was truly backward. And so to come back 30 years later and see the remarkable progress is itself very encouraging. And in fact, I believe Odisha has become a model of development for the country to watch. But there's the other side. We've all watched Odisha very curiously from Delhi, from Karnataka, from where I come from. We've always been impressed with its 2 millennia-old historical heritage. I had the pleasure and privilege of seeing the magnificent Konark Sun Temple, as of course all of you all here, the famous Jagannath Rath Yatra. And we have known that Odisha has always been culturally very rich, but tragically, economically poor. It occupies, as most of you all know here, 4.7% of the country's total geographical area, has 7% of the country's forest area, 10% of its water resources, and a phenomenal 20% of its mineral resources. Odisha is an intricate amalgam of regions carved by both nature and history. The geographical contrasts are very evident, from the prosperous East Coast plains, which we straddle now, to the mining industrial belt of the northern plateau, to the lush green revolution zones of the central tableland, and of course to the backward and tribal-dominated southern hills of Eastern Ghats. Each of these, as you know here, has a bearing on Odisha's development. And we know that, as I was mentioning earlier, that it was among the most backward states of the country, gone beyond the pale of even the Bimaru states. But what I think is remarkable, and that I think is, you know, it somehow times itself with Mr. Naveen Patnaik, and he can take credit for this when he came as Chief Minister. If you look at the statistics at that time, 60% of the population was below the poverty line, one of the highest in the country. Today, that percentage of population living under poverty is down to almost half, 33%. That is a remarkable achievement in 17 years to happen. In fact, it is in terms of the reduction, it is among the highest across the country. And so let's give Odisha a warm round of applause just for that achievement. And literacy concomitantly has also increased dramatically, up from 50% to around 74%, which is almost the national average that we have now. If you take a look at the economy, the past two decades, 20 years or so, has seen a remarkable transformation in the structure of Odisha's economy. And what's most remarkable is that the share of the industrial sector in the GDSP, has almost trebled and now matches the services sector at about 40% each. And agriculture, of course, come down over the recent years, which is a very important, significant fact that you've got the weightage moving very, very heavily to productive 40% industry and the services sector. And this, if you match the two, correlates very well with the massive industrial investment that happened in the early 2000s and the major industrial policies that were announced. And if you look at the way the GDP has grown, between 2003 and 2012, Odisha grew at a phenomenal 9.2%. That's much, much faster than the rest of the country. And in the past 5 years, if you look at 2003, 2012 as the boom years all across the country, but in the past 5 years when there's been enormous pressure of resources and as we've seen recession across the world, Odisha has been growing at an average of 7%, which is again annually much higher than the national growth rate. And another very good indicator of that development is that per capita income has grown almost sixfold and is now around 66,890 last year. So clearly, as we can see, that Odisha has made truly, truly remarkable progress. And for that, the state governments and the bureaucrats and the people have to be lauded for this outstanding progress. But as with everything else, there's still plenty to be done, especially in the social sector. The 8 districts of the KBK region remains the poorest in the state and possibly the country. Overall, access to safe drinking water, sanitation, housing, health, and life expectancy still needs a lot of improvement. And that is why I think today, this particular State of the State report on Odisha that we will be presenting later in the afternoon is important. Let me just give you a bit of a background of why we are doing, or India Today magazine is doing the State of the State reports. Since 2003, we've actually done what is called the State of the States report, which we rank various Indian states according to key parameters of both business environment, the quality of life, and other issues. And this, over a period of time, has now come to be recognized as the gold standard for evaluating social and economic health of any Indian state. In fact, Prime Minister Modi recently, when he had come to one of our functions, lauded this entire exercise as being among the most professional journalistic exercises being conducted to evaluate state development. And as we sort of did this from 2003, many of the chief ministers, particularly those who were not getting the awards in certain categories, said that we want to know how that particular state did better in these categories. You know, if it was health, what was that state doing that made it number one, and what could we do to do it? And they made a request that why don't you come and examine individual states and look at the way they are developing, and therefore we will be able to compare what parameters we should improve to match up with the other states. And this, of course, became all the more important because today the states are the key drivers of economic development. It's no more just Delhi that is doing everything. The states, in fact, are the powerhouses of India's development. So we decided that we would do what is called the State of the State report as almost the next logical step to doing the national report. The concept that we have developed is to do what I would call an X-ray of the state by conducting a microanalysis study at the district level. And we believe that the districts, more than the capitals of a state, more than the capital of the country, are the true drivers of change. That's where real development happens, and that is then force multiplied into the state and then into the country. So we initiated the process first with a small state. We started with Jharkhand, just so that we would get our economic and social parameters right, easier to evaluate that. Then we took a large state, Uttar Pradesh, and we again developed and tested the modules to see if there was a correlation. We followed that with Gujarat, then had Rajasthan, and more recently Karnataka. This is the first time we're coming to the East, and we're very privileged to do that. In the next 5 years, we intend to cover all the states of India across the country. So in some senses, what we're trying to do is that the state of the state should be the touchstone of competition between states. That, we are comparing apples to apples when we do these things. It's not that, say, a district in Gujarat is different in many ways. Of course it is. I'm not saying that. But if you take the key parameters that we assess development, we find parallels. And you can then work out across the country sort of national barometer of how to evaluate districts, how to evaluate states in terms of it. A far more, we believe, enriching exercise than when we just do a national parameter. And if you look at the way we go about it, let's be very clear, it is not a perception survey. It's not like opinion polls that we have, that you sort of go around and interview people and they come back and say, well, we think the state is good or bad. You could go terribly wrong, as we've seen with our own opinion polls many times when you do political polls. So what we decided was that we would hire the best of agencies, and in Odisha's case, we have requested the Institute of Human Development in Delhi, a remarkable organization doing work, and plus we supply them, and Ajit Jha, our editor researchers here, who put together the report, and later today will be talking as well. We look at reports like the census, the NSS, the National Crime Records Bureau, combined with a lot of reports from the districts. Let me tell you, it's a very tough job. As you know, statistics in India is difficult to collect, correlated, despite the technological advances. And so we have to make sure that what we're getting is authentic. So sometimes the reports are not up to date, like 2017, 2016. And the other thing is that we don't just do in the last 4 or 5 years, we take a 20-year or 30-year perspective. So we are able to get across many decades what is the change being reflected in every district and what's happening on that front. And I'm sure it'll be very interesting for all the district collectors and others who are present here, other officials here, to see how this would work out and pan out when they look at it. And we took several crucial parameters. And these were education, which we think is very important, and how do you measure it, health, infrastructure, agriculture, industry, services, water and sanitation, law and order, prosperity, and then also we looked at the overall performance. So today we will be presenting later in the evening winners of 20 categories, or 10 categories and 20 districts, and I'll explain how that works. We also realized that certain districts, particularly the one that we are, the capital that we're sitting in now, as well as the neighboring districts, will always do well. Historically, nature, everything else has conspired to make these districts the most prosperous, the coastal districts the most prosperous in Odisha. So automatically there'll be winners. If you look at any of these parameters, they'll be way ahead of all the other districts there. So we decided that we will also award what we call the 10 most improved districts. So in the category of 10 winners that we have for the best districts, we've also introduced the improved districts. So in the last 5 years, last 10 years, which districts have done remarkably well? So that gives them the fair opportunity. It's somewhat a level playing field to what is there. Then in Odisha, we also found that that also may not be adequate, because there's some very, very poor districts that will automatically fall by the wayside, because they just cannot match, even in the past 5 years, the kind of rate of growth of some of the other districts. So we decided that we would study certain parameters and give them special awards for that. So if there's a particular district, which we'll mention later on, that has done well on a development program, a specific development program, let's reward them, because the exercise, we believe, is to be very constructive. It is not a process like the usual press that comes to be hammering lack of development. And the idea is to guide, show ways, debate, discuss, and see where we can improve, because this is our country. We might belong to different states, but this is our India, and we can learn a lot from Odisha, as so can Gujarat, and Odisha can learn from Gujarat or any other state that is there. So we hope that this State of the State report that we're going to unveil later, and I'm delighted to announce that the Chief Minister, Shri Naveen Patnaik, will be coming this evening to give away the honors, to give away the awards to the various winners, and we're deeply honored that he's doing so. And we believe that this itself will spur a competition among districts, because we also give the remaining top five that is there, to say that these districts can then study and see how they could improve, and therefore spur the entire development process in this country. So we look forward today to a very, very interesting morning and afternoon and evening. And I'm delighted that the Finance Minister has honored us by coming here and agreeing to deliver the keynote address. And on behalf of the India Today group, I once again warmly welcome all of you all, and look forward to great debate and discussions in this first ever State of the State Conclave and Report of Odisha. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.